Hey guys, I am just sitting out on my balcony, enjoying the last vestiges of summer, enjoying my coffee from my Vetitude coffee mug, compliments of the awesome Dr. Rachel Lordell. But I wanted to get on here today because I wanted to have kind of a serious conversation about something that's been on my mind a lot lately that I would say is a troubling trend I've been seeing. I don't know if it's a new trend or not, or if it's just something that's been standing out to me more. And I do worry a little bit that this conversation could result in some backlash. It did a little bit over on Facebook with my post the other day. Some people didn't like what I had to say, and I think maybe thought that I was victim shaming a little bit, and I am not victim shaming, you guys. Anyone who is suffering from mental health issues, burnout, compassion fatigue, suicidal ideation, you guys, absolutely reach out, get help. It is not your fault. And it is absolutely normal, and it is okay to reach out for help. And I know I recently got my QPR certification, and I strongly recommend that all of you go onto the AVMA website where you can access QPR certification for free. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer, and it's kind of first aid, CPR, first aid for suicidal ideation, because quite honestly, most people who are suffering from suicidal ideation can't reach out and ask for help. So we need to learn to identify the symptoms and step in and help them get the help that they need. So guys, definitely do it. It's super important. But yes, there is a but here. But we also need to learn to take a little responsibility for our own happiness and our own mental well-being in this profession. And I am seeing a troubling trend lately of veterinary professionals, mostly over on Facebook. Why you gotta be so negative, Facebook? That's why I like you guys on IG so much. Anyway, I've seen a troubling trend of veterinary professionals blaming problems within the profession, mainly on clients, also on some other circumstances, on corporations, on bosses, on millennials, on everybody. Everyone just wants to blame everyone else for everything. And you guys, we need to take some personal responsibility. Partly because we can't change other people. And especially in a profession that's as emotionally charged as ours is, it's normal that people are going to lash out sometimes. Our clients in particular, I'm talking about here, it's normal that they're going to lash out when things happen that are, very emotionally upsetting for them, like having a very sick or injured pet, especially one that requires treatment that they may not be able to afford, or that they can afford, but that's going to result in some serious consequences. That money was probably being earmarked for other things. Okay, not everyone, in fact, most people do not have $10,000 in savings for these kinds of emergencies. And so when things like this happen, it's very, very frustrating for them, and that often comes out in inappropriate ways. And I'm not saying that it's okay, and I am not condoning bad behavior, but I am saying that it's normal for people to react. And if we shame them for that instead of trying to put ourselves in their shoes and letting ourselves see things from their perspective and diffusing the situation, we're just going to make it worse. All right, if someone reacts badly and then we get all defensive in response, we don't diffuse that situation. We make the situation worse, and it not only makes the problem worse for that particular situation, but it further intensifies this divide between the veterinary profession and the people that we're trying to help. And that is not okay, because we need to be a team. We need to be a team with our clients. And so we need to learn to diffuse these situations. And the other reason that it's important is because just from a psychology perspective, from a psychology perspective, the more that we react this way, the angrier we get, the more defensive we get, the more we put blame on other people, the unhappier we're going to be just overall, versus trying to have a more positive frame of mind. And I know it's not easy, and a lot of us have these neural pathways that have been ingrained into us, and it's not just a matter of flipping a switch. We can't just say that we're going to be positive and optimistic and make it happen. That's not the way that our brains work. But if we can learn to recognize these negative thought patterns as they're happening and then replace them consistently with good thought patterns. So, if something happens with a client and they react badly, and then we get frustrated and upset and pessimistic and say, clients are just all so entitled and blah, blah, blah. And we can recognize that that's happening and stop it and replace it with the more positive, yeah, this client is probably really upset and frustrated right now, and they've lashed out, and we need to have a little empathy for them. If we can do that repeatedly, eventually we make new neural pathways that make it become more automatic, and we learn to have a more optimistic outlook on life in general. And that spills over to our overall mental well-being and mental health. And so this is positive psychology, and it is the difference between how we live our lives not being depressed versus how we live our lives actually being happy. And it's super important. And so guys, I strongly recommend that you do a little looking into this. I really like the book Learned Optimism. It's basically the opposite of learned helplessness. It's learned optimism, and you can learn how to be more optimistic. And I think that it's something that we all need to work on, because the negativity and the pessimism and the blaming culture that I see going on in veterinary medicine these days is really, really troubling, because I think that it's only going to spiral and get worse and intensify the mental health problems that we're having in this profession. And so I think if we can actually learn to take a little responsibility for ourselves rather than blaming our problems on other people, we will actually do a much better job of getting a hold of the mental health problem that we have in this profession. So let me know what you think, good or bad. I am open to conversation here. All right, so don't be afraid to tell me what you think. I know a lot of you won't. And let's have a conversation. So leave me a comment, let me know. All right, bye guys.